For 3 years of marriage, I had never once shown up at my wife's company. Her name is Sarah, and she built Viridian Technologies from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. She told me my presence would undermine her authority, that she needed her employees to see her as untouchable, not as someone's wife. I respected that. I loved her. So I stayed invisible. I played the role of the supportive husband perfectly. I attended galas alone, made excuses to my family about her long hours, and never once questioned why she kept me at arm's length from her professional life. My friends thought I was crazy. "You're a successful venture capitalist, Liam," they'd say. "Why are you hiding in her shadow?" I'd smile and tell them I was proud of her. And I was. Genuinely. But pride, I've learned, is a dangerous thing when it's not reciprocated. That afternoon, I wanted to do something special. Our 3rd anniversary was approaching, and I had planned a quiet weekend away, just the two of us, no phones, no meetings, no excuses. I bought her favorite flowers, blue irises, the same ones she carried at our wedding. I left my office early, drove across town, and decided to surprise her at work for the first time. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. I rehearsed what I'd say. Surprise. Beautiful. Thought I'd steal you away for an early dinner. Simple. Sweet. Romantic. The doors opened with a soft chime. The hallway was packed. Executives in expensive suits, their faces arranged in masks of flattery and admiration. They were gathered around 2 people at the center of attention. One was my wife, Sarah, radiant in the designer suit I had photographed for her during our trip to Paris last month. The other was a man I didn't recognize, younger than me, sharper jawline, the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having been told no. Sarah had her arm looped through his. She was laughing, bright and bold, in a way I had never seen her laugh with me. Her smile was different. Freer. Like she had been holding her breath for 3 years and had finally exhaled. "Let me introduce everyone," she announced, her voice carrying that polished, performative warmth she used for investors and board members. "This is my new husband, Ethan. He's also joining us as our new vice president." The hallway erupted in applause. Warm. Flattering. Sycophantic. I stood frozen at the elevator entrance, the blue irises slipping from my fingers. The petals scattered across the marble floor like shattered pieces of my 3-year marriage. No one looked at me. No one noticed the man in the doorway, invisible as always, overshadowed by the spectacle of her announcement. Her new husband. Those 2 words replayed in my mind like a broken record. New husband. Not her husband. Not Liam. A replacement announced publicly, with no regard for the man who had funded her dreams, supported her ambitions, and loved her with a humility that bordered on self-destruction. I watched Sarah's face. She was glowing, basking in the admiration of her employees. The man, Ethan, whispered something in her ear, and her cheeks flushed pink. She laughed again, that same unfamiliar laugh, and leaned into him like he was her anchor. My heart didn't race. My breath didn't quicken. Something much colder settled into my chest, a numbness that spread through my veins like ice water. This wasn't pain. This was clarity. I stepped forward, walking through the scattered petals, past the executives who looked through me as if I were furniture. No one moved to block me. No one recognized me. I pushed open the door to the adjacent conference room, empty, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the hallway where my wife was introducing her new husband to her empire. I walked to the head of the long mahogany table and pressed the speakerphone button. I dialed my chief attorney. "Mr. Blake," the voice answered immediately. "Attorney Miller," I said, my voice calm, measured. "I, Liam Hayes, in my capacity as the sole principal of Hayes Capital Partners, hereby announce the following." Through the glass wall, I saw the applause in the hallway falter. Heads turned. Eyes found me. Sarah's smile froze on her face, her eyes widening as recognition finally dawned. I looked directly at her and continued, enunciating every word. "The $20 billion I have invested in Viridian Technologies is hereby declared completely void, effective immediately. I am invoking the breach of trust clause in our valuation adjustment agreement, and I demand immediate liquidation of all assets." The silence that followed was absolute. The smile on Sarah's face crumbled piece by piece, like shattered glass falling from a broken frame. Ethan's legs began to tremble visibly, his confident posture collapsing into something small and pathetic. Sarah shook off his arm and rushed toward the conference room, her high heels screeching against the marble floor. Liam. She burst through the door, her eyes wild with shock and fury. Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you're saying? I hung up the phone and stood slowly, meeting her gaze for the first time as an equal, not as a husband. I know exactly what I'm saying, Sarah. The game is over. Her hand shot out and grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. This is my company, she hissed, her voice low and threatening. Don't you dare interfere. We'll talk about this at home. Is there still a home? I pulled my arm back, gently but firmly. I don't think there's anything left to discuss. My lawyer will contact you. I pressed the elevator button. Behind me, I heard Ethan's panicked voice, the executive's murmurs, Sarah's ragged breathing. She called my name again, softer this time, using the pet name she only used when we were alone. Liam, please. Listen to me. It's not what you think. Ethan is just. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Have some dignity, Sarah, I said, looking past her at the trembling man in the hallway. Don't let your new husband see you like this. Her face went pale. The doors closed between us, shutting out her shock, her humiliation, and the silent scream I saw forming on her lips. The elevator descended smoothly, my reflection staring back at me from the polished metal walls. Calm. Controlled. Dead inside. I pulled out my phone and dialed my assistant, David. Activate Level 1 contingency plan. Understood, Mr. Hayes, David replied without hesitation. He had been with me for 7 years, through acquisitions and liquidations, through triumphs and disasters. He knew better than to ask questions. All asset liquidation procedures are ready. Attorney Miller's team is en route to Viridian Technologies. Should I freeze all joint accounts belonging to you and Mrs. Hayes? All of them, I said, including every supplementary card she holds and the trust fund. Understood. I paused, then added, investigate someone for me. Ethan, new vice president at Viridian. I want everything from his birth certificate to his latest credit card statement. 2 hours. Yes, sir. The elevator arrived at the lobby. I walked out into the evening sunlight, which felt strangely harsh against my skin. My phone buzzed twice in quick succession. Sarah, Liam, if you touch a single cent of mine, I will make you regret this for the rest of your life. Sarah, I'm warning you. Stop this right now, or you will face consequences. I deleted both messages without reading them again. Then I blocked her number. A black sedan glided to the curb in front of me. David had already arranged transportation. I got in and gave the driver an address, Cloud Ridge Estate. My private property. A villa Sarah didn't even know existed, purchased 3 years ago under a shell corporation. She had never asked where I went when I needed space. She had never asked much about my life at all. The drive gave me time to think. 3 years of marriage, examined through a new lens. Every late night at the office. Every business trip that lasted longer than necessary. Every time she tensed up when I mentioned visiting her at work. I had explained it away as ambition, as stress, as the weight of running a billion-dollar company. Now I saw it for what it was. The villa sat at the top of a private road, surrounded by ancient oaks and immaculate landscaping. I let myself in with my fingerprint, the security system disarming with a soft beep. The interior was minimalist. Cold lines, neutral colors, none of the warmth Sarah had insisted on for our shared home. I poured myself a glass of ice water and stood by the window, watching the city lights blink on below. My phone rang. An unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. I turned off the phone entirely. The world went quiet. Half an hour later, the villa's landline rang. Only David had that number. I picked up. Mr. Hayes, we have a situation. Speak. Mrs. Hayes accessed an offshore account approximately 40 minutes ago. She transferred $50 million from your private reserve. I set down my glass. She used the emergency authorization. Yes, sir. The one where she's listed as your secondary emergency contact. The agreement requires you to be unreachable or incapacitated for her to access those funds. This is a clear violation. David's voice carried barely suppressed anger. We can report this to the authorities immediately. No, I said. Let her spend it. Sir. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. David, when a house is about to collapse, you let the residents carry out whatever they can. It makes the eventual accusation much more satisfying. What I want isn't for her to return the money. I want her to have nothing left to return. A long pause. Then, understood, sir. The liquidation process will continue. Monitor every transaction from Viridian Technologies. And I want that information on Ethan within the hour. I hung up and turned on the home theater system. The massive screen lit up, not with a movie, but with dozens of security feeds. The chairman's office at Viridian. The conference rooms. The finance department. Sarah's private lounge. These were the privileges of being the largest anonymous investor. Sarah had always believed the mysterious backer was an overseas fund that admired her vision. She never suspected it was her invisible husband. On the screen, Viridian Technologies was in chaos. Sarah paced her office like a caged animal, her phone pressed to her ear, her free hand gesturing wildly. Dig into Hayes Capital Partners. I want everything. What do you mean you can't find anything? You're useless. All of you are useless. Ethan stood in the corner, wringing his hands. Sarah, what do we do? Who is this Liam guy? How is he connected to Hayes Capital? Sarah whirled on him, her face twisted with rage. Shut up. You don't get to ask questions right now. Ethan flinched and retreated further into the corner. I watched the scene unfold, feeling nothing. This was the man she had chosen to replace me. A boy in a man's body, crumbling under the first sign of real pressure. Just then, my private line rang again. A different number, but one I recognized. Sarah's mother, Margaret. Liam Hayes, have you lost your mind? Margaret's voice could cut glass. Do you want to destroy my daughter? Hello, Margaret. Is something wrong? You still call me Margaret? I don't want you as a son-in-law anymore. Sarah built that company with her own hands, and you think you can just take it away? What kind of man are you? I didn't argue. I simply asked, did she tell you what she did today at her company? Silence on the other end. No. Of course she hadn't. After a few seconds, Margaret's voice returned, notably softer. Marriage has its ups and downs. You're a grown man. Can't you just work it out? Go to the office, apologize to Sarah, and reinvest that money. Apologize. I laughed, and there was no warmth in it. Margaret, the house you're living in right now, I pay the mortgage. The money for Sarah's nephew to study abroad, I paid that too. Your heart surgery last year, I covered every cent. Her breathing changed. By the time I finished, she was silent. I let her have her way because I loved her, I said. Now I don't. Why would I keep giving in? I hung up before she could respond. On the screen, Sarah's office door burst open. Her secretary rushed in, pale-faced. Mrs. Hayes, there's a problem. A team of attorneys is in the lobby. They say they are from Attorney Miller's office. They have a court enforcement order. Sarah's body swayed. She grabbed the edge of her desk to keep from falling. For the first time, genuine fear appeared on her face. The top floor of Viridian Technologies had become a circus. Attorney Miller, my most trusted legal strategist, led his team through the hallway like a precision instrument. He was a man of perpetual seriousness, and today he wore that seriousness like armor. His voice, amplified by the small microphone his assistant carried, cut through the murmurs and speculation. Mrs. Hayes, pursuant to Clause 11, Section 3 of the Valuation Adjustment Mechanism Agreement signed between Viridian Technologies and the anonymous investor, my client, Mr. Liam Hayes, the breach of trust clause has been triggered. Every employee on the floor stopped what they were doing. Heads turned. Necks craned. No one wanted to miss a word. This clause activates automatically upon the discovery of marital infidelity combined with an attempt to transfer company assets to an illicit partner, Miller continued, adjusting his glasses. The investor holds the unilateral right to withdraw all investments and demand immediate liquidation. Sarah's face cycled through emotions: shock, fury, humiliation. That's absurd, she spat. Ethan is a colleague. A friend. You're twisting my words. Friend. Miller's eyebrow arched almost imperceptibly. A friend you publicly introduced as your new husband at a company gathering and simultaneously appointed vice president. Mrs. Hayes, do you take this board for fools, or do you simply not understand how contracts work? A ripple of uncomfortable laughter passed through the gathered employees. Sarah's complexion shifted from red to white to a sickly gray. This was the empire she had built. These were the people who had looked up to her. And now she was being dissected like a specimen in front of them all. Ethan, meanwhile, had retreated so far into the background that he was practically pressed against the wall. His face was the color of old cheese. He looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Security. Sarah's voice cracked as she shouted, "Remove these people immediately. They are trespassing." Several guards hurried over, but the moment they saw the court enforcement order in Miller's hand, the official red seal impossible to ignore, they halted mid-step. No one moved. Then the elevator opened, and Margaret stormed onto the floor like a hurricane. She had clearly come straight from home. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes mismatched, and her face was contorted with a fury that made even the senior executive step back. "You worthless girl!" Margaret screamed, charging directly at Sarah. Before anyone could react, she raised her hand and slapped her daughter across the face. The sound echoed through the silent hallway. "Mom, what are you doing?" Sarah clutched her cheek, stunned. "What am I doing? I'm saving what's left of this family." Margaret pointed a trembling finger at her daughter. "I told you to go apologize to Liam. I told you to fix this. But no, you had to keep playing your little games. Now look at what you've done. The money is gone. The house is gone. Everything is gone." Margaret's words carried enormous weight. The employees exchanged glances, piecing together the implications. Their powerful, independent CEO hadn't just cheated on her husband. She owed her entire company to his money. Her family's lifestyle depended on his generosity. "You've ruined us," Margaret wailed, collapsing dramatically onto the floor. "How could I have raised such an ungrateful daughter? You had a good man, and you threw him away for some pretty boy. Now we'll all be destitute." I sat in my villa, watching the spectacle unfold on the security monitors. My expression remained neutral, but somewhere deep inside, a small, cold satisfaction bloomed. This, I thought, is what happens when you build your life on lies. On the screen, Sarah swayed again. The pressure, her mother's theatrics, her employees' stares, the crushing weight of her world collapsing, finally became too much. Her eyes rolled back, and she crumpled to the floor in a dead faint. Chaos erupted. Ethan rushed forward, but Margaret shoved him aside. "Don't touch her, you parasite. This is all your fault." I watched the man called Ethan being verbally flayed by a middle-aged woman, unable to defend himself, trembling like a leaf in a storm. He didn't have the courage to protect Sarah, the woman he claimed to love. He didn't have the backbone to stand up to anyone. Pathetic. My phone buzzed. An email from David. Subject line, Ethan Cole, complete file. I opened the attachment. The information was exhaustive: birth certificate, school records, employment history, and a detailed log of every romantic relationship he'd had in the past decade. Ethan Cole, 28 years old. Graduate of a third-tier drama program. No legitimate employment for the past 5 years. His primary income came from frequenting high-end clubs and gyms, where he cultivated relationships with wealthy, lonely women. He had 3 credit cards, all maxed out, with total debt exceeding $2 million. Additionally, he owed $5 million to an underground lending operation in the city. Money borrowed at usurious rates, now ballooning beyond his ability to repay. He had met Sarah at a private gym. He was her personal trainer, one of those handsome faces paid to listen and flatter. She had been vulnerable, lonely, and hungry for attention I hadn't known she needed. The email contained one more attachment, a video file. I clicked play. The footage came from a hidden camera I had installed in our living room, a precaution I'd taken after a break-in years ago, though I'd never told Sarah about it. The timestamp was from 3 nights ago. I had been out of town for a meeting. On the screen, Sarah led Ethan through our home. He wandered from room to room like a tourist, touching expensive furniture, admiring the artwork. "Wow, Sarah, this place is incredible," he said, throwing himself onto our Italian leather sofa. "Your husband must be loaded." Sarah sat beside him, her hand trailing along his arm. He's adequate, she said dismissively. But he's not here. And you are. Ethan picked up our wedding photo from the nightstand. He doesn't look like much. He isn't, Sarah replied, her voice low and intimate. He's convenient. He pays the bills, and I let him pretend he matters. But we both know the truth, don't we? I closed the video. The numbness in my chest crystallized into something harder. Something colder. Convenient. Adequate. Not much. That was what 3 years of devotion meant to her. I opened my private line and dialed David. I want you to send that loan document to the collection agency. The one for $5 million. Tell them Ethan Cole's girlfriend is the former CEO of Viridian Technologies. They'll know what to do with that information. Yes, sir. And David. Sir. Send Sarah's mother a notice of eviction. The house goes on the market next week. I hung up and walked to the window. Below, the city glittered like a jewel, unaware of the war being waged in its towers. The game had only just begun. The news spread faster than I anticipated. By morning, every business publication, every social media feed, every gossip column in the city carried the story. Former CEO on her knees. Hayes Capital pulls $20 billion. The fall of Viridian's queen. I had not planned the spectacle, but I did not stop it. David, ever efficient, had planted the seed. Sarah would arrive at Hayes Capital Partners headquarters at 9 o'clock. She would kneel at the entrance. She would crawl. If she wanted mercy, she would earn it. Whether she actually would, that was her choice. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office on the top floor, looking down at the crowd gathering in the plaza below. Reporters with cameras. Rivals with smirks. The curious masses who had nothing better to do than watch someone else's tragedy unfold. At precisely 8:59, a town car pulled up to the curb. Sarah stepped out. She wore a simple grey dress, no designer labels, no jewelry. Her hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail, her face bare of makeup. She looked thinner than she had 2 days ago, hollowed out, as if something essential had been scooped out of her. Margaret climbed out after her, along with Sarah's nephew, Kyle. Neither of them touched her. They flanked her like prison guards, their faces a mixture of desperation and calculation. "Remember what we discussed," Margaret hissed, loud enough for the nearby microphones to catch. "Get down on your knees. Show him you're sorry. It's the only way to save this family." Kyle nodded vigorously. "Yeah, Aunt Sarah. It's just kneeling. Think about my tuition. Think about Mom's house." The cameras flashed. The reporters surged forward, microphones extended like weapons. "Mrs. Hayes, do you have anything to say to your husband?" "Mrs. Hayes, is it true you introduced another man as your new husband?" "Mrs. Hayes, will Viridian Technologies survive this?" Sarah ignored them all. Her eyes lifted, searching the skyscraper's glass facade, as if she could see me on the top floor. She couldn't, of course. But I felt the weight of that gaze even from this distance. At exactly 9 o'clock, her knees buckled. She dropped to the marble floor with a dull crack that I imagined I could hear even from 108 floors up. The crowd gasped. Cameras clicked furiously. She didn't pause. She knelt, pressed her forehead to the ground in a kowtow, then rose to her feet. 3 steps forward. Kneel again. Forehead to the ground. Rise. 3 steps. The distance from the entrance to the elevator lobby was no more than 100 yards. It took her 45 minutes to crawl it. By the time she reached the lobby, her forehead was scraped raw, bleeding slightly, smeared with dust and her own tears. She didn't wipe them away. She just stood there, swaying slightly, waiting. The security guards looked to me for guidance. I nodded once. They escorted her to the private elevator and brought her up. She stood before me in my office, blooded and broken, and yet something in her eyes remained defiant. A flicker of the woman I had married, buried somewhere beneath the humiliation. "I came," she said, her voice hoarse. "I did what you asked. Now will you stop?" I didn't answer immediately. I walked around my desk, approaching her slowly, deliberately. She flinched when I reached out, but I only brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Sarah," I said softly, "did you really think kneeling would be enough?" Her eyes widened. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded document. A hospital report. I pressed it into her hands. Whose child are you carrying? I asked. All the color drained from her face. She stared at the paper as if it might bite her. How did you? I know everything, I said. I know you're 6 weeks pregnant. I know you planned to use this child as leverage. A final trump card to win back my sympathy, to threaten me, to reclaim what you've lost. She clutched her lower abdomen protectively. Liam, this child is yours. Ours. Remember the night before your business trip. We didn't sleep together that night, I interrupted. I was in the guest room because you said you needed quiet for an important meeting. We haven't been intimate in 2 months. Sarah. Did you forget? Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Whose child, Sarah? I asked again. She stared at me for a long moment. Then her shoulders sagged, and the defiance in her eyes crumbled into something raw and desperate. Ethan's, she whispered. It's Ethan's. I know. I walked back to my desk and retrieved another document. My personal medical history. I handed it to her without comment. She read it. Her hands began to shake. Infertile, she breathed. 0 chance of conception. Liam, this is why we never had children, I said. This is why you never got pregnant despite years of trying. I knew. I've always known. I never told you because I was ashamed. Because I was afraid you'd leave me. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. You've known everything from the beginning. About Ethan. About the pregnancy. About all of it. I gave you chances, Sarah. Every time you brought him home, every time you lied about where you were going, I waited for you to choose differently. You never did. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, Liam. Please. I'll do anything. Anything. I looked down at her, this woman I had loved with my entire being, who had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and felt nothing but a vast empty coldness. You want to do something? I asked. Fine. From today forward, you work for me. Not as an executive. Not as a consultant. You will report to the janitorial staff. Every toilet in this building, every single one, will be cleaned by your hands until I decide otherwise. Her face went white. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. I pressed the intercom. David, escort Mrs. Hayes to housekeeping. She starts immediately. 3 weeks passed. Sarah cleaned toilets. I watched. The security cameras captured everything. Her reddened hands, her hollow eyes, the way she flinched when former subordinates walked past without acknowledging her. The employees, once so eager to please her, now treated her like furniture. Worse than furniture. They treated her like a cautionary tale. Margaret was evicted from her house. Kyle's university tuition was revoked. The loans I had quietly paid off for years, the mortgages, the medical bills, the endless family emergencies, all of it came due at once. Neither of them had the resources to pay. They had spent years believing my money was endless, their entitlement absolute. Reality had a way of correcting such delusions. Ethan, meanwhile, had disappeared. The collection agency had been enthusiastic in their pursuit. I received reports of his frantic phone calls, his desperate pleas, his eventual flight from the city. He left Sarah a single text message, I'm sorry. I can't do this. Don't try to find me. She didn't cry when she read it. She just stared at the screen for a long time, then put her phone away and went back to scrubbing floors. I watched all of this from my office, feeling nothing. But then came the call. The number was encrypted, routed through several international exchanges before reaching my private line. Only one person had that number. Someone I had not spoken to in 5 years, not since I left the organization and tried to build a normal life. Ghost, the voice said. Familiar. Aged. Heavy with an accent I couldn't quite place. You're still alive. Father, I replied, using the title he had taught me to use, though he was not my blood. It's been a long time. Indeed. A pause. I hear you've been busy. Destroying companies. Humiliating wives. Very dramatic for a man who swore off this life. You've been watching me. Son, I never stopped watching you. I just let you believe you were free. I said nothing. The weight of those words settled over me like a shroud. You need to know something, Father continued. The doctor, your old comrade, has betrayed the organization. He's taken half our operations, our contacts, our resources. And he's looking for something you have. What something? The inheritance I gave you when you left. The safe you've been hiding for 5 years. The one you've never opened. My blood went cold. How do you know I haven't opened it? Because if you had, you would have come back to me a long time ago. That safe contains everything, Ghost. My entire legacy. The proof of who you really are. Who I really am. Father sighed, and for the first time he sounded old. Tired. Open the safe, Liam. Then call me back. But be quick about it. The doctor is already in the city. He's been watching you just as closely as I have. He knows about Sarah. He knows about the child. And he will use both of them to get to you if he has to. The line went dead. I sat in the darkness of my office, the city lights glittering below, and tried to process what I had just heard. The safe. I had hidden it years ago in the one place I thought no one would ever look, our home, the apartment Sarah and I had shared. In the back of the master bedroom closet, behind a false panel, sealed with a lock that required my fingerprint and a 16-digit code. I had never opened it. Father had told me it was my pension, my reward for years of service. He told me to keep it safe and never speak of it again. I had obeyed. Now I wondered if obedience had been the point. I left the office and drove to the apartment. The building felt different now, empty, unwelcoming, stripped of the warmth it had once held. Sarah's things were still there, scattered and forgotten. She hadn't come back since the night I'd confronted her. I walked to the bedroom closet, pressed my thumb against the false panel, and entered the code. The safe clicked open. Inside, there was no money, no gold, no diamonds, just a single USB drive and a photograph. The photograph showed a young man holding a baby, both of them smiling at the camera. The man was Father, younger, happier, without the weight of decades on his shoulders. The baby wore a silver necklace with a small charm engraved with a single word, Liam. My hands trembled as I inserted the USB drive into my laptop. The drive contained a single encrypted file. I tried every password I could think of, my birthday, my code name, Father's birthday. Nothing worked. Finally, on a whim, I typed the date handwritten on the back of the photograph. The file opened. It wasn't a list of contacts or financial records. It was a video. Father's face filled the screen, older than in the photograph but younger than the man I had spoken to tonight. He sat before a fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows across his weathered features. Ghost, he said. Then he smiled, and the smile transformed his face into something almost gentle. No, I should call you by your real name. Liam. My son. My breath caught in my throat. I lied to you, Father continued. I'm not just your mentor. I'm your biological father. 25 years ago, during the war that nearly destroyed our organization, your mother was killed. Murdered by the doctor's father, the old physician, while she was protecting you. I sent you away to keep you safe, placed you with a family who could give you the normal life I never could. Tears blurred my vision, but I didn't wipe them away. I watched you from a distance. Every birthday. Every graduation. Every triumph and failure. I recorded everything, not because I wanted to control you, but because I wanted to know you. When you were old enough, I brought you into the organization, not as my son, but as my weapon. It was the greatest mistake of my life. He paused, his eyes glistening. The safe isn't a weapon, Liam. It's an apology. Inside this drive are the keys to everything I've built: wealth, connections, power. Use them however you see fit. Avenge your mother. Destroy our enemies. Or walk away and never look back. Whatever you choose, I will love you anyway. I have always loved you. I was just too much of a coward to say it. The video ended. I sat in the dark apartment, surrounded by the ruins of my marriage and the revelation of my true identity, and I wept. The press conference was my idea. Not as an act of revenge, though some would see it that way. Not as a declaration of war, though the doctor would certainly interpret it as such. It was something simpler, something purer. It was the truth. I stood on the stage at Hayes Capital Partners, facing a sea of reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. Behind me, a massive screen waited, blank and ominous. Beside me stood Attorney Miller and David, both stoic, both prepared. Sarah was not there. She was in the hospital, recovering from a stress-induced collapse, her unborn child still clinging to life despite everything. I had made sure she received the best care. Not because I forgave her, but because I was done with vengeance. It had consumed enough of my life. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady. Thank you for coming. I have a story to tell you. It is not a comfortable story. It involves betrayal, murder, organized crime, and the corruption of institutions meant to protect the innocent. It involves me. It involves people I have loved and people I have hated. And it ends today. I inserted the USB drive into the port on the podium. The screen behind me flickered to life, displaying the first document, a detailed accounting of the doctor's criminal empire. Arms trafficking, drug distribution, political assassinations, money laundering on a global scale. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Reporters frantically took notes. Cameras zoomed in on the screen, capturing every word. I am Liam Hayes, I continued, also known in certain circles as Ghost. For 15 years, I served an organization that operated outside the law, believing I was protecting the innocent. I was wrong. I was a weapon in the hands of men who valued power over justice. But I am done being a weapon. I advanced through the documents, revealing everything Father had given me. The names of collaborators. The locations of hidden accounts. The evidence of crimes that spanned decades and continents. The man known as the Doctor, my former comrade, now my enemy, is currently in this city. He believes he can intimidate me into silence. He believes the secrets I hold can be bought or stolen or tortured out of me. He is wrong. I looked directly into the nearest camera. To the Doctor, I say this, I am not afraid of you. I am not impressed by you. And I will not let you destroy one more life. Your empire ends today. Not because I am powerful, but because the truth is more powerful than any weapon you possess. I pressed a final button. The last document appeared, a full confession from the Doctor's own lieutenant, obtained through channels I would not disclose, detailing every crime the Doctor had committed in the past decade. The authorities have already been provided with copies of all this evidence, I said. Arrests are imminent. To anyone who has supported or enabled the Doctor's activities, I advise you to contact a lawyer immediately. Your cooperation will be taken into account. I stepped back from the podium. The room buzzed with questions, shouted over one another, but I raised my hand for silence. One more thing, I said. All assets under Hayes Capital Partners, every dollar, every investment, every holding, will be liquidated and donated to a new charitable foundation. The foundation will focus on supporting victims of organized crime, funding addiction treatment, and providing legal assistance to those who cannot afford it. I will not profit from blood money any longer. I turned and walked off the stage, leaving the chaos behind. Epilogue. 3 months later. The coffee shop was ordinary, unremarkable. Exactly the kind of place no one would expect to find me. Sarah sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug. She looked healthier than the last time I had seen her, color in her cheeks, light in her eyes. The child was gone, placed with a family in another country who had been waiting years for a baby. Sarah had made the decision herself. She said she couldn't raise a child conceived in betrayal. I didn't argue. Thank you, she said quietly, for not destroying me completely. I shrugged. I came close. I know. She looked down at her mug. I deserved it. Maybe. Maybe not. It doesn't matter anymore. She nodded slowly. What will you do now? With the foundation, I mean. Build something that matters, I said. Something that helps people instead of destroying them. She smiled, a small, sad expression. You were always too good for me, Liam. I wasn't. I was just as broken as you were. I just hid it better. We sat in silence for a while, two strangers who had once been everything to each other. The sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the worn wooden tables. Liam, Sarah said finally, there's something I need to tell you. The doctor, he contacted me again. Before everything fell apart. He said if I helped him find the safe, he would give me enough money to disappear. To start over somewhere new. I tensed. Did you help him? No. She met my eyes. I told him to go to hell. It was the first honest thing I'd done in years. I studied her face, looking for the lie. I didn't find one. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. I didn't do it for you. I did it for me. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't completely lost. Outside the window, a man in a long coat walked past. He glanced at the coffee shop, his face obscured by sunglasses and a pulled-down hat. For a moment, our eyes met through the glass. Then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd. The doctor was still out there. Wanted. Hunted. But alive. The game wasn't over. It would never be over, not completely. Some wounds were too deep to heal, some enemies too persistent to forget. But I was done fighting. I finished my coffee, said goodbye to Sarah, and walked out into the sunlight. The city hummed around me, indifferent and beautiful. Somewhere, a child laughed. Somewhere, a family sat down to dinner. Somewhere, a woman who had once been my wife was learning to live with her mistakes. And me. I was learning to live with mine. The truth, I had discovered, was not a weapon. It was not a shield. It was simply a choice, to see the world as it was, not as I wished it to be. To accept my own failures alongside my triumphs. To forgive, not because others deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I walked down the crowded street, anonymous among strangers, and for the first time in years I smiled.